Over the last 8 months, I've had the chance to interview quite a lot of people in the Scottish football media. I had a fantastic idea of potentially travelling the country and picking up all these different interviews. However, due to the coronavirus pandemic, I've been unable to do so. So I took to Zoom and got some very reputable names and decided to put together a last minute recompilation of basically key moments that I've had in interviews talking about that night in Serbia. This is the last official piece of content that I'll be producing before the Euros. So without any further ado, here's hoping we'll be boogieing come Monday the 14th. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed the rest of the video, and a quick reminder that we'll be going live on the Scotland National Team YouTube channel on the 14th from 1:45 for Scotland versus the Czech Republic. Anyway guys, I'll see you then.
The night of the Serbia-Scotland game, I was talking to you from this office. This is my home office here, and it was quite dark because it was afternoon here, but it was still quite dark as the match was finishing because the nights are fair drawing in, as they say. Yeah. And I was essentially watching it on my computer here, watching it on ESPN Plus, who had the rights to the game. And I was sitting watching it. I wasn't pacing around as I often would be.
Couldn't jump with anyone. You weren't allowed to celebrate with anyone. You had to be distant. So that's why I was kind of running and jumping. But you hear me kind of screaming in the background because I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. When you hear that phrase, oh, you never knew whether to laugh or cry. I genuinely didn't know whether to laugh or cry. And that's why this kind of scream came out. It was like a in-between sort of thing. And that was one with Scotland, that, yeah, you were able to kind of celebrate it. I think, people accepted that, as long as it was all distant and safe, which it was. But, that was one where, you certainly didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It was such a momentous moment, you could say.
So we filmed about 80% of the show on the Wednesday. Then we all went into work on the Thursday, done a shift. Then travelled into the studio, and then we watched the game and kind of socially distanced watched the game on the Thursday night, and then we just basically filmed the very first section. So the very first section of the show, we spoke for 20 minutes about the Scotland game, and then they used 10 minutes of it. So it was great, because I suppose if we hadn't had the show, I would have been watching it in the house myself or whatever. But I was fortunate enough to be watching it with Telford and Fowler and Joel. Robert wasn't there because he's not in the first bit, so Robert was there. So it was the four of us, plus Jordan, the director, and Andy, and the kind of studio guys, the camera guys. So there was a few of us kind of watching it socially distancedly, but it was good. It was brilliant. Scotland winning was obviously the most important thing. But see, to be able to watch a game of football, and even though there's like maybe only 6 of us or whatever, to be able to watch an important game with your pals and to be able to discuss it and kind of dissect it and celebrate and then commiserate and then celebrate again with your pals around about you. Like, for 2 hours it kind of felt like everything was back to normal, and that was brilliant. A brilliant night.
Oh, I was in Pacific Quay. I was in Glasgow. I was in the building. I was working on the programme, which at first, like, even just in that in itself, I was so excited about to get to work on that programme. I could not believe it. And I was working in the spare suite on, interviews and I think poser and stuff. So we were kind of busy throughout it, and so we were really quite busy. But the game's on, and you can hear the commentary and see the equaliser. I dropped to the ground of my edit suite, like as if someone had died. I dropped I swear to God, I got out my chair like I'm sitting just now and fell to the ground. My editor was like, what's going on? Saw it happen, and I was just sitting on the ground with my hands in my head like this. I think I tweeted saying it was the worst heartbreak of my life. I still agree with everything I said in that tweet. It was the worst heartbreak I'd ever felt. I remember just thinking, this is it. They've fluffed it again.
I was about 15 yards away from where I am now in my living room. Obviously, the way things are just now means I couldn't watch it anywhere, and my flatmate, as he is doing right now, just through that wall, was working. So like when Christie scored, like I went fucking mental, obviously by myself, and he came running through, and he was like, "Yes!" And then like I sort of like
back.
And then pretty much. And then obviously when Serbia scored right at the end, I didn't make a noise. I just put my head in my hands. I was like, "It's happened again. I cannot believe that." And then like Nickel came through. He's like, "I saw the score on my phone. Like, what's happening?" And I was like, "McTominay." And that was basically it. I was just like absolutely furious. And then like when it got to penalties, Nickel sort of stopped working for a wee bit, and we watched it together, and just went absolutely mental. But it was one of those things. It's like I could hear the street and like people across the street and other people in my building and all that kind of stuff. Everyone was going mental, and then 5 minutes later there was folk out on the streets, like just folk running up and down and going crazy. Like, and this is the west end of Glasgow, which you might assume is more of a rugby area, if I'm being totally honest with you. But folk were going absolutely mental, and it was magic. Like,
I was actually watching it quite calmly because I remember the game kicking off, and I remember thinking to myself, this actually appears to be quite good. I like the way Scotland are passing it around. There's not this, panic. There's not hoofing the ball forward. And, I know Serbia quite well. A few of their players play in Germany, which football I cover a lot. And I saw, in contrast with Serbia, a team that looked a bit panicked and weighed down by it all. And this continued, of course, throughout the game. And it was really only when we got closer to 90 minutes and then that Scotland thing happened again that I sort of thought, maybe I was too confident. But no, I mean, honestly, I think it was a game that Scotland deserved to win. I mean, we have to do it the hard way. We don't usually believe in doing it the straightforward way. But I was remarkably calm in comparison with other Scotland games I've watched as a fan down the years.
But when that equaliser went in, when it went out for a corner, I remember saying in commentary that I actually felt sick at that moment, because everyone who's ever watched Scotland for any amount of time, every Scot probably, even if they're not into football, knew what was coming next from that corner, the equaliser.
I was like, this is it, typical Scotland. We're like, typical, do you know what I mean? You were just like, we're going to lose this now. Like, there's no way. And you had all your best players just sitting on the bench. And we were like, oh, so you've got like, you were just, I can't even tell you how bad it was. Like, everyone knows how bad it felt. But then having to pick yourself up and going, because we had a Scotland win closer and a Scotland lose closer. So the Scotland win closer had happy music and the Scotland lose closer had less happy music. Because we thought we'll make two versions. And I remember we were working on the happy closer. Obviously it was getting closer. I think this is it, we've won it. You're getting close, you're thinking, hopefully, this is it. We keep it. You're very hopeful at that point. Then that when that goal went in, my editor, like unbeknownst to him at the time, like I think it was a subconscious thing he did, but he clicked from this sad closer, the happy closer, over to the sad closer, and I heard a flash of the sad music, and I was like, don't play that to me just now. I was like, it's too raw. Go back to the happy closer. We're still going to win. I was like, no, I don't want to hear it. We're still going to win. We have to win. So yeah, but I remember when he just clicked over to it, I was like, what are you doing? Don't do that. I don't need to hear that just now. I'm too heartbroken. But yeah, when obviously it went to penalties, which was, to be fair, one of our worst fears about the programme in general, because penalties were finished, I think it was like 30 seconds or a minute before we went on air. So the pundits like had every chance of going on air and not knowing what the result had been. And like Tomo and the pundits might not have known. So it was tight, because we were thinking if this turnaround, gets changed, our programme had to be turned around like that. Especially when it went to penalties, because then you've filled your programme with, say you've got like a 10-minute edit of each half, or say you get 20, like say you get, each half is, you're doing a 20-minute edit overall. When it goes to penalties, you then need to cut from your edit, like you need to cut from, because you've not got the allocation, like the broadcast time. The programme's still the same length, but you've now got to add in penalties.
Where were you in the moment that Alexander Mitrovic had his penalty saved by David Marshall?
I was probably standing just in front of him, because that's normally where a player would be when he's in your back pocket. So I'd probably have been just in front of him at that point when he hit that penalty. But to be fair, I was at the halfway line, right beside Ryan Jack, Kenny McLean. And Kenny McLean had just hit his penalty, and he basically says, "I'm running here," he said, "because Marshy's saving this." And Jack was sitting behind me. He was in absolute panic mode because he was next penalty. But he knew what he was doing. He was telling me what he was going to do. And Kenny was like, "It doesn't matter, Marshy's saving this, we're running." And Kenny was literally on the run before the pen had even been hit, and Marshy saved it. To be fair, I swear it was the first one there. You can actually watch that back. It was brilliant. Sadly, I was on the touchline. I'd blown up for the 9th game in a row. Plus as well, I think at 118 minutes, Steve Clark's looking around going, "I can stick on," was it like Griffiths?
Yeah.
I can put him on, he's no bad at hitting the ball. Maybe Stephen that can't move anymore, so we'll make a wee switch. But no, I was on the touchline, and ironically, whenever I ran, I did cramp up. But I think there's a picture of him at the bottom of a pile-up, and I've never feared for my life so much. There was about 30 people on top of me. My arm was killing me, I was panicking. But no, it was certainly.
So I was on air on Clyde One Super Scoreboard Thursday 12th of November, and we had been building up to it for so long, just really looking forward to the show. And it had already been like a roller coaster up to that. Really enjoyed the build up to the game. We had like ex-players on. We had Charlie Mulgrew and Kevin Gallagher on to talk about their memories. Like some of the callers that phoned in that night were just the memories they were giving us of all sorts of stuff, like times fall in Scotland. Some of the memories were hilarious, like guys who had gone to Euro 96 or France 98. This guy had gone to and never came home. He went to France 98 to follow Scotland and like just stayed there, and he got married and stuff, and then we were all laughing, and then he said, and then I became an alcoholic, and we're like, oh, right, okay, sorry to hear that, and it's fine. And then I hitchhiked across the Alps, and then I got stuck there for a little bit, and I've still never been home, and then my wife died, and then we were like, oh, like, and it was this roll up, this call like just before kick-off. So that like set the tone, and then during the game was amazing because I felt like I was able just to kind of watch it as a fan. Like I probably didn't broadcast very professionally, wasn't really that bothered about like the kind of standards. I was able to like complain about the referee in a way that like a fan would at home, and everybody remembers the roller coaster of the game. Within like 5 minutes you just knew that we were at it, and they weren't. You could just tell straight away. And then we took a deserved lead, and we deserved to hold on to it, and we probably didn't deserve to concede, and then we did. It was the kick in the stomach, typical Scotland, by which time we've probably taken off a lot of our better players and put other guys on. So you're thinking, don't think we can go on and win this from here. And then when it gets to penalties, everybody had a wee sense of maybe, because we had done well in the previous penalty shootout. And at that key moment, it was just amazing. It was just like slow motion. It was just something that like only sport can really give you that. I always say in these types of occasions that you got to genuinely feel sorry for people that don't like live sport. Like only live sport can give you that single moment, that absolute burst of emotion. And see when people talk about like the best, is that the best day of your life or whatever, like that would be right genuinely one of the best feelings of my life. And I'm sure lots of people would feel the same in terms of that one moment, that just outpouring of emotion. It was unbelievable. And of course the pause guy, because I kind of thought as well, as soon as he did say it, I thought, was he off the line there? And then he started doing the whole point his eyes to the referee, and it just went in slow motion. And when they all started running away and celebrating, it was just unbelievable. I think like everybody watching, I could re-watch it a million times, never get fed up with it.
It was magic. Like obviously, if I'd been in the pub for it, or if I'd been in Serbia, it would have been unbelievable. But even then, like, it didn't really matter, because the euphoria of qualifying was still the same. In that instant, that Davy Marshall saves the penalty, like, it doesn't matter where you are, your brain is going to go, this is the best thing ever.
So Scotland have never made it out of a group before in a major finals. Is 2021 the year?
Yes, it is. I do believe that. I just think under Steve Clarke, Scotland are just hard to beat. And that's what I've wanted Scotland to be for as long as I can remember. I just want to be a team that it's hard to beat against any opponent, and you do feel that way, that you can get a result against any team, really.
Yeah.
And that's he's shown that throughout his career, Steve Clarke, hasn't he? How good a manager he is. So I think we've got what it takes to get the results that are needed. I mean, it's going to be a hard one against England, obviously, but it's second place in the group. Can we get there? I think so.
Yeah, I would definitely. I'm inclined to agree, but it's just a case of if we top the group, we're getting either Germany, France, or Portugal. If we finish second, it's another glamour tie of.
I know. Oh.
But let's just get out of the group first, eh?
Let's get out of the group. That's the aim. That's the aim. Anything after that, it will take.
Scotland have never made it out of a group before in the major finals. Is 2021 the year?
I couldn't care less.
We're there, it's fine, it doesn't matter.
I think so. Well, I hope so. I mean, they've got everything in their favour. The format of the Euros, inviting basically every team in Europe to them, helps. And I think the group it's tricky. Obviously, England are the best team in the group, but I wouldn't put Croatia and the Czechs miles ahead of us, and we get to play them both at Hampden, which should give an advantage. And also, they create a last 16, don't they, from 24?
Yeah, which is completely.
So look, 8 teams go home. It gives you a great chance. Some of the stories from the last Euros are not necessarily stories, but the progressions of some of the teams were. I mean, it was ridiculous. You were getting teams that had barely scored, and they were getting to like the quarterfinals and things like that, or hadn't won. There was a
Portugal
team that barely won a game.
Portugal did.
Was it? Yeah, that was it. And it's like. I don't like the format of it. It's far too generous, but look, it gives us a good chance of getting through. And if we could get to a knockout game, and then you never know, but that would be brilliant. To be in a knockout game in a major tournament for the first time would be pretty magical.
It's just a shame we can't take group games in the Euros to penalties.
Yeah, that would be handy. But listen, I think I keep saying to my mates in England who think that it's a given that England will beat Scotland. I'm so not convinced, because Steve Clarke, will know exactly what is required, and the Scotland squad will be decent. I say we because I've covered them for so long, and I feel more of a Scotland fan than an England fan, which again nobody believes, but it's true. But you look at the players in that squad, and I think. I would not surprise me one bit if they went and got a draw with England at all. The other 2 games are interesting as well. I mean, Czech Republic. I know Scotland played 2 very different Czech Republic teams, but to get a couple of games at Hampden as well, assuming they still play it the way they want to play it across a few countries. What a chance to actually get past the group stage. I keep mentioning this to my Scottish pals, and even now they're saying, "Listen, let's just be happy for now that we made it to a major tournament." I'm like, fine, but how about the next step and actually get out of the group?